Hi, this is James, and I'm here with Epic, and I'm really excited to share and talk to Mackenzie, who is the Chief Brand Officer with KOTN and one of the co-founders. KOTN, if you don't know, is a Toronto-based organization that uses a farm-to-table concept only with clothing. It's a certified B Corp, and let's just jump right in. So Mackenzie, thanks for being with us here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We're really excited to learn a little bit more about KOTN. So why don't we just start at the very beginning? Why did you start KOTN, and how did you get the ball rolling?
Yeah, so I started KOTN with my now husband, Ben, and our friend, Rami, and the three of us met living in New York. It was that Canadian connection where we all somehow got in the same room and became friends. And one of our favorite pastimes was talking about business ideas. Mm-hmm. The three of us come from quite different backgrounds. I come from more of a branding product background. Ben was working at a tech startup, and Rami was working in private equity. So kind of like three very different areas, but all complementary. And the two of them, Ben and Rami, were friends from high school. So they were always had a new business idea every year.
Yeah.
Most of them never really got off the ground. And I was really passionate about fashion. So we started talking about ideas. Ben had a lot of t-shirts in his wardrobe, and he had his everyday t-shirts and then his going out t-shirts. And It just seems like that ubiquitous product that's never really perfected. Everybody's on a constant search for a great t-shirt. And to us, a great t-shirt meant having a stylish cut, being made out of a really beautiful fabric, and being affordable. And then the extra layer on top was being made in an ethical way. So we sort of set out to solve that problem initially, and we launched KOTN with just 3 styles of t-shirts in black and white.
So this very simple idea, but with a lot of challenges. Not only there's enough challenges, as you mentioned, of finding a stylish cut and finding a color scope that kind of works with you and how you feel. That's a whole side of fashion and design that has its own set of challenges. However, that layer of ethically made or socially conscious retail is actually quite a challenging one. So I'd love if you could talk a little bit more about the concept of traceability and shed some light on how you've built that into your supply chain.
Yeah, for sure. So I had a bit of knowledge about ethical fashion going into this endeavor. I worked at Holt Renfrew before moving to New York, and I was part of the team that helped launch H Project, which is the ethical area at Holt's, and I was responsible for all of the charitable initiatives at Holt Renfrew. So that was in 2012, 2013, and at that point, ethical fashion wasn't as big of a conversation, and it was really, really challenging to find things that fit in to the aesthetic of Holt Renfrew, and then also personally, it was hard for me to find stuff that matched with my own more minimal aesthetic. Everything was very much baskets and pom-pom caftans and stuff.
Yes.
So things had developed a bit by the time we started KOTN in 2015, but we didn't really have any background in actually manufacturing garments. In fact, we were 100% clueless. So we started the journey because Rami's background is Egyptian. He was born in Egypt. Egyptian cotton has a cachet that we knew, okay, this is a good quality fabric. People know about it.
Absolutely.
And Rami was there for a family wedding. So he was okay, let me start asking around and see if I know anybody.
Okay.
And he ended up getting connected to a distant cousin of his mother's or something who's actually a cotton farmer or lives in a cotton farming region. And that was our starting point. So no one really sets out to start a fashion brand and goes to a farm. But that's where we ended up.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's not really how you think about starting a fashion brand.
Yeah, I think most people don't even consider that farms are even involved in making clothes.
Right.
So that was a really eye-opening experience for us, because so many brands now are talking about transparency, but that is more just to the final stage of production, which is the cut and sew factory. And really that's nothing new. Like pretty much all fashion brands have transparency to that cut and sew factory, but there are about like 5 stages before that, that most companies, I think it's like less than 5%, have very, very, like have no visibility to the raw material stage. So just in like meeting these farmers and starting to talk to them, we started to understand the challenges that they were facing in terms of like, one, Egyptian cotton being a premium fiber, and in this movement to fast fashion over the last like 20 years, premium fibers have kind of dropped off the radar, because people are trying to get the lowest possible landed costs for goods.
Right.
And anything that costs more as a raw material is just going to have a negative impact on your margin. So they were facing issues there, and Egyptian cotton farms are majority or entirely small family-owned plots of land, not large commercial farms like you would have in the US. So we decided to kind of base our whole brand around working with these people and supporting them and kind of helping to revitalize the Egyptian cotton industry. And then we built our supply chain from there. So we figured out how to take that raw material and turn it into yarn, and then weave that into fabric, and then dye it, and then cut and sew it, and then send it to Canada. So,
so simple.
So
really,
simple.
really straightforward. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so that was kind of the starting place. And yeah, now we are committed to having traceability, which is getting increasingly more and more challenging as we try to expand our line, have a bigger offering. Not every country can manufacture every type of product. So we're starting to move some production to Portugal. So having like visibility into where we're sourcing the materials is getting more and more challenging as we grow, but I think is imperative to really understanding like if people are being treated well or not.
That it's a really challenging piece, and it becomes significantly easier when you start to kind of embed those practices early on in your organization and early on in your growth, because it allows you to know where you kind of started, and as you're growing, you can always kind of benchmark to yourself. And I know some of the challenges of the large organizations as they are trying to come to sustainability. It's that benchmarking becomes really challenging, and also shifting some of your supply chains and shifting your processes. As you mentioned, that race to the bottom in terms of price and cost means that you have to narrow your focus, and that narrowing your focus means that you're not taking into account your entire supply chain. And cotton is actually taking it even like a little bit of a step further. You're not even just talking about the raw materials or where you get it at the farm. You're now talking about the farmers and how they actually farm their land. To what you just said, like you're actually looking at the farms and the households and the families themselves. And I know some of the programs that you're working on the kind of that like almost that last mile when it comes to raw materials, is you're also partnering with organizations that are supporting literacy of children in those regions as well. Can you talk a little bit about those programs?
Yeah, for sure. So that was another thing that came about because we were there on the ground. And I think that's like one of the most important things in setting up ethical supply chain or an ethical business, is you can't like market your way into doing something that will actually have impact. Like a lot of 1-for-1 models have been disproven now. But we were only really able to understand what they needed because we were there. And we started by giving away subsidies to the farmers. So we would give them fertilizer and seeds and agricultural consultants ahead of the growing season. And when they would come to receive their subsidy, they had to sign their name and show their ID in order to receive it. And half of the signatures on our page were thumbprints. And that was like a really impactful thing to just realize that, okay, most of these people don't know how to write their own name, and that means that they can't really like take their business into the future or understand how to respond to the demands that are happening in the industry or anything like that. And then alongside that, it also means that because their children weren't going to school, they were working on the farms, the girls were getting married at a young age. And so we started just talking to them about like, why are the kids not going to school? What's the situation here? And the main reason was just that they didn't have access to school. Most of this in rural Egypt, in the Nile Delta, where most of the cotton farming happens. In some of these villages, it's like a 2-3 hour commute to get to school, and there's no way of them they don't have a car.
Right.
And so the parents just end up having the kids stay at home and help them on the farm. So we partnered with an organization in Egypt that focuses on, they have a lot of different facets, but they actually won the UNESCO prize last year for women in education. So yeah, so they're working on building these rural community schools. Each school only has like 30 to 40 students at a wide range of levels. And it has to be we mandate that at least 50% of the students are girls. So yeah, we've now funded 7 schools in Egypt, which is pretty cool. And it's just a really awesome way to for us to see real impact, and for the farmers that we work with to feel like we're actually invested in their family's future.
I want to just pause right there and just to say on behalf of Epic, but everybody who's going to be watching this interview, I don't think if I ever thought about starting a fashion brand that I would end up investing in 7 schools with the goal of investing in probably 7 or 20 more, in hopes of helping to raise out a community into the future, into the future of the commerce. So I just think that that's a really amazing way and a really great example of ethical business practices in motion, and sustainable practices and sustainable supply chain. Really understanding that it's not just your business at the end that's important, the entire chain and the entire being the connective tissue that is able to kind of connect people. I think it's just really powerful. So I just wanted to say thank you, and it's really wonderful being able to sit down with you. So thank you for your time.
Thanks.
So on that note of some of those other practices that take place, we're talking about the people side. What are some of the other practices that are taking place, not just on the people? So we're talking products, we're talking processes, and what are some of the ways that you're building those into your supply chain, as well as just into your business practices overall?
Yeah. So we've been around for 5 years, and I would say that really our focus over the 5 years has been community building. Okay. And we are a B Corp certified brand, and we actually won the B Corp Best for the World in the community category. So for those that don't know what B Corp is, you can look it up online. They show the ratings in different areas, community, environment, et cetera, et cetera. So now that we've achieved some of our goals there, and as we're growing, we are shifting our focus to have a better understanding of our environmental impact as well. We focus on natural materials, so that's kind of the starting point for us. Is we really believe in the quality and benefits of natural materials, but also the environmental impact long term of natural materials is less impactful on the environment in terms of when it gets to a landfill, but even just in terms of microfibers when you're washing your garments, going into the water stream and stuff like that. Natural materials are beneficial. They also last longer. And I think sustainability has really been something that we've considered from the design stage. So we don't want to create products that are going to go out of fashion next season. We want these to be things that you can keep in your wardrobe for a long time, and that are built to last. Most fast fashion brands, which I've only learned in the process of starting Cotton, it test for 5 to 7 wears of their garment, which is really crazy. So that the average amount of times that a garment is worn now in North America is 7 times. So that's like really crazy. It's disposable clothes basically. And the products that we're making, a white t-shirt isn't going to last forever, but it's the kind of product that we imagine people wearing like multiple times per week and making it a integral part of their wardrobe. And I think there's a lot of like positive impact that goes along with that. So now we're we're in the process of working with some environmental consultants that are analyzing our supply chain and figuring out how we can make improvements in terms of reducing water usage is a big thing when you're growing cotton, especially in a desert.
Right. Yeah.
And then also at the dyeing stage, there's a lot of things that you need to consider. So we do only work with dye houses that have like water recycling plants and only use like Ecotech certified dyes and all of those certifications. But we're just trying to understand a little bit of a deeper level beyond just the certifications at this point. So those are a few of the things. Obviously, like all the materials that we use in our packaging are recycled. That's like an easy check mark. But I think the biggest thing is just really understanding like the different processes that happen in order to process the raw material into a clothing item. And in Egypt especially, it's a very like bureaucratic process as well, because you can't just go in and start calling things organic. There's no organic certification in Egypt.
Oh, interesting. That's something I had no idea about either.
Yeah. And we do work with Better Cotton Initiative, which is hopefully like a path to farms becoming organic, but they really consider all elements of it. Like sometimes organic cotton uses more water than non-organic cotton. So just at this point, really just trying to educate ourselves, but I would not say we're like 100% environmentally sustainable. You can't be if you're making products, but we're trying to do our best. And we do carbon offsetting for every shipment that we send out as well. But again, to us, that's like not really enough to scream from the rooftops that we're a sustainable brand. It's just like another added thing.
It's a responsible business practice.
Yeah.
So it sounds like, thank you for sharing all those things. I had no idea like the levels and the depth with which you were going through in your supply chain. I think that is, it's got to be exhausting. And it sounds like you're doing a ton of learning, which is also kind of exciting. You're just learning all the time and kind of digging in. And I know one of the challenges, especially in corporate responsibility and social impact, is that there are a lot of different certifications that may or may not be the best to use. So I heard that a little bit in yours, where it's like you kind of have to actually dig into the other side of the certification. So there's actually like an added layer of challenge to determine whether or not you're being responsible.
Yeah.
And with that in mind, something that we love to do at Epic and something that we want to just kind of potentially support your organization as you're growing is, what are some of like today? I know you've mentioned a little bit about design. You've talked about expanding your supply chain. You talked about expanding where you're doing manufacturing and the way that and the expanding the processes. And obviously, COVID presents its own set of challenges when it comes to e-commerce and team development and brand development. It's all these own added challenges that is happening right now because of the environment we're in. What are some of the big ones that you are dealing with as the chief brand officer or as a co-founder? And what are some people that you could be connected with, either individuals or types of people, or questions that you are questions that are keeping you up at night? And maybe we will be able to connect you, or maybe one of our viewers will be able to.
Cool. I'd say that one of our big challenges right now, especially as we're growing and pivoting some of our mission in terms of like manufacturing in other countries and stuff like that, is really distilling all this information into a message that's actually like sticky and digestible to the customer. I think that especially with Facebook ads, like and social media marketing in general, you have such a little amount of space and time to communicate something that's so complex.
Yeah.
So I think for us, we're in it day to day, we're in the weeds, and it's very personal to us, and we're very passionate about all these different areas, but I don't have a full picture of like what our customer really actually cares about and what resonates with them the most. And also how to to cut out some of the information that they don't necessarily need to know, and highlight some of the things that make a big impact for them in terms of a purchasing decision. Because at the end of the day, like, we're selling clothes, we need people to buy into our story. And that's like one of the main things that we are selling is a better made garment. But at the end of the day, if they don't buy, we're not going to be able to like have the impact that we want. So it's that like distilling of message. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for us right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Mackenzie, so much for sharing with everything today. I am thrilled to be able to be here with you. For anybody who's listening, if you need a white t-shirt or a black t-shirt, you know exactly where you need to be buying it. I already have a bunch of cotton stuff, so I will continue to purchase. So, and thanks again for sharing your message and the impact that you're making in the world.
No problem. Thanks for including me.